Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the last quantum barrier generator come online. The massive device hummed with power as it joined the invisible wall that now surrounded Earth's entire solar system. 10 years of work had led to this moment. 10 years since humanity had made the hardest decision in their history. "Sir, the final generator is operational," reported Lieutenant Amy Fletcher from the control room. "The barrier is complete." Jake nodded slowly. The blue and green planet below looked peaceful, almost innocent. It was hard to believe that this small world had just told the entire galaxy to stay away. Earth had closed its borders, and there was no going back. He remembered the day it all started. First contact had seemed like a miracle. The Galactic Empire arrived with promises of friendship, trade, and knowledge. Their ships were beautiful, their technology amazing, and their representatives spoke of peace and cooperation. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. Dr. Lisa Grant had been one of the first scientists to study the aliens. She was brilliant, curious, and excited to learn about the thousands of species that made up the Empire. At first, everything seemed wonderful. The Empire offered to share their technology and invite Earth to join their great civilization. But Lisa noticed things that others missed. She asked questions that made the alien ambassadors uncomfortable. Why did some species in the Empire seem afraid? Why were the most talented young people from new worlds always invited to the Empire's core systems and never seen again? Why did the Empire's technology seem old and recycled rather than innovative? The answers came slowly and terribly. The Empire was not the peaceful alliance it claimed to be. It was a machine that consumed worlds and species. They would arrive with promises, integrate a planet into their system, then slowly drain away everything valuable. The smartest people, the best resources, the most useful technologies, all taken to feed the Empire's endless hunger. Jake pulled up the final transmission from Ambassador Ryan Brooks on his tablet. Ryan had been one of Earth's best diplomats, sent to the Empire's capital to finalize humanity's membership. His last message was just 3 words, transmitted in secret: "Run and hide." The Empire had discovered Ryan's investigation into their true nature. His signal was cut, and he was never heard from again. But his warning had been enough. Earth's leaders realized they faced a choice: submit to slow destruction or find another way. The decision had been unanimous. Earth would withdraw from galactic civilization completely. They would hide behind barriers that made their solar system invisible and unreachable. The Empire would think humanity had simply vanished, a failed first contact that led nowhere. "Dr. Grant is requesting permission to come aboard, sir," Fletcher reported. "Send her up," Jake replied. Lisa Grant arrived a few minutes later, carrying a datapad full of reports. She looked tired but determined. For the past decade, she had led the effort to understand everything they could about the Empire from the safety of their hidden world. "The barriers are working perfectly," she told Jake. "Every test shows we're completely invisible to their sensors. As far as the Empire knows, Earth just disappeared." Jake walked over to the star charts on the wall. Red dots marked Empire territory, which seemed to grow larger every year. "What's the latest intelligence from our deep space probes?" Lisa's face grew dark. "It's getting worse out there. The Empire has absorbed 17 new species in the past 5 years. 3 entire star systems have gone completely dark. We think they stripped them of everything useful and abandoned them." She pulled up images on her tablet. Dead worlds, empty space stations, the remains of civilizations that had trusted the wrong people. They're accelerating their expansion. I think losing contact with us made them nervous. They're grabbing everything they can before something else disappears. Jake studied the data. The Empire's pattern was always the same. Arrive with gifts and promises. Integrate the new species slowly. Identify their most valuable people and resources. Then gradually drain everything away until nothing remained but empty worlds and broken spirits. Any sign they're looking for us? He asked. That's what worries me, Lisa admitted. Our deep space monitors have detected scout ships in nearby systems. They're not just exploring, they're searching. I think they want to know what happened to us. Jake had expected this. A civilization doesn't just vanish without consequences. The Empire would want answers, especially since humanity had shown promising potential in their brief contact. Earth's scientists had impressed their alien visitors with rapid understanding of new concepts. Human engineers had improved on Empire technology within weeks of seeing it. That kind of talent was exactly what the Empire valued most. How long do you think we have? Jake asked. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. If they're really searching? Maybe a few years before they develop technology that can find us. The quantum barriers are based on principles they don't understand. But the Empire has access to knowledge from thousands of species. Eventually, someone will figure it out. Jake looked out at Earth again. In the past 10 years, humanity had not been idle. Hidden behind their barriers, they had worked frantically to prepare for the day when hiding would no longer be enough. Earth's population had been unified by the alien threat in ways that seemed impossible before first contact. The old nations still existed, but they worked together now with a common purpose. Resources flowed freely between continents. The brightest minds collaborated without regard for borders or politics. Everyone understood that humanity's survival depended on becoming something the Empire had never encountered before. "Show me the progress reports," Jake said. Lisa smiled for the first time in their conversation. "You're going to like this part." She pulled up files showing Earth's advancement over the past decade. Fusion power was now standard across the planet. Artificial intelligence had been integrated into every aspect of society. Genetic medicine had eliminated most diseases and extended human lifespans. Most importantly, human technology had evolved along completely different paths from anything in the Empire's database. The isolation forced us to innovate, Lisa explained. We couldn't rely on Empire technology, so we had to develop our own solutions. Our computers work differently. Our ships use different principles. Our weapons operate on theories the Empire has never seen. Jake nodded approvingly. This had been the real plan all along. Hide long enough to become strong enough. When the Empire finally found them, humanity would not be the same species that had first encountered those alien ships. "There's something else," Lisa said quietly. "We've been monitoring Empire communications. There are resistance movements out there, species that tried to fight back, worlds that went into hiding like we did. They're still out there, scattered and desperate." She showed him intercepts of coded transmissions, fragments of messages between scattered rebel groups. The Empire controlled most of the galaxy, but not all of it. There were others who refused to submit. "When the time comes," Jake said slowly, "we won't be alone." Lisa nodded. "The Empire thinks it's inevitable. They believe every species will eventually submit because resistance is impossible. But they've never met humans who had 10 years to prepare," Jake touched the barrier controls one last time. The generators were running perfectly, hiding Earth from the vast galactic civilization beyond. But he knew this was just the beginning. Someday soon, those barriers would come down. When they did, the Empire would discover that humanity had spent their time in isolation very well indeed. The question wasn't whether the Empire would find them. The question was whether the Empire would be ready for what they found. Lieutenant Commander Amy Fletcher adjusted her headset and stared at the sensor displays surrounding her workstation. The Deep Space Monitoring Station was humanity's eyes and ears beyond the quantum barriers. Hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, it watched and listened to everything happening in nearby star systems. For 3 years, Amy had commanded this outpost. She knew every blip on the screens, every pattern in the data streams. Today, something was different. Something that made her stomach twist with worry. "Paul, come look at this," she called to Chief Engineer Paul Davis, who was checking the station's power systems. Paul floated over in the low gravity, his tool belt jangling softly. He was one of the best engineers in the fleet, calm and steady, even when things went wrong. But when he saw Amy's screen, his face went pale. "Those are Empire ships," he said quietly. Amy nodded. 12 heavy cruisers, moving in formation toward the Kepler system. That's not a normal patrol. She enhanced the image, and they could see the distinctive shape of Empire vessels, long and elegant, with technology that humanity still didn't fully understand. But more importantly, they could see what the ships were carrying. Transport pods, Paul observed. Hundreds of them. Amy had seen this before in the records from other systems. When the Empire decided to relocate a species, they came with ships exactly like these. The population would be told they were being moved to better worlds, given new opportunities. In reality, they were being scattered across the galaxy, broken apart so they could never organize resistance. "Run the communications intercept," Amy ordered. The station's advanced listening equipment had been picking up Empire transmissions for weeks. Most were routine. Supply requests, patrol schedules, administrative messages. But some carried darker content. The translated text appeared on Amy's screen. Her training had prepared her for many things, but reading about the systematic destruction of civilizations never got easier. "Subject species 447b has been successfully integrated," she read aloud. "Relocation of primary population centers will commence immediately. Intellectual assets have been identified and will be transferred to research facilities. Resource extraction can begin once population density reaches acceptable levels." Paul shook his head in disgust. "Species 447b, they don't even use their real names." Amy checked the database. "The Kalari. They were a peaceful trading civilization. 3 billion people across 12 worlds." She paused. "Were." She switched to another intercept, this one more recent. The words made her blood run cold. "Priority. Research directive from the High Council. All science vessels are to focus on barrier penetration protocols. The Lost World remains a high-value target. Estimated timeline for breakthrough: 18 standard months." Amy and Paul stared at each other. The Lost World. There was only one planet the Empire would describe that way. "They're talking about Earth," Paul said. Amy pulled up more intercepts, her fingers flying over the controls. For months, she had been noticing increased scientific activity in Empire territory. Ships gathering at research stations, experiments being conducted near stellar anomalies, resources being directed toward projects with classified names. Now it all made sense. The Empire hadn't forgotten about humanity. They had been working systematically to find them. "Look at this," Amy said, highlighting another transmission. "They've been testing different detection methods on other hidden colonies. 3 rebel outposts were discovered and destroyed in the past year. The Empire is learning." Paul floated to his own workstation and began running calculations. If they're 18 months out from a breakthrough and they've been working on this for years, he looked up grimly. "Amy, I think they know roughly where we are." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. The quantum barriers were incredibly advanced, based on principles that even humanity barely understood. But the Empire had access to technology from thousands of species. Eventually, someone would figure out how to see through them. "There's more," she said, pulling up the latest sensor data. "Long-range scans show a massive fleet moving toward our sector. Not just any fleet, it's a research armada. 30 ships, including their most advanced science vessels." Paul studied the formation. "That's not a random patrol. They're coming here specifically." Amy enhanced the image further. The Empire ships were still months away, but they were definitely heading toward Earth's general location. Their formation was perfect for systematic space scanning, the kind used to search for hidden objects. "We need to send a warning," Paul said. Amy was already composing the message. It would be transmitted through a network of hidden relay stations, each one cloaked and positioned to avoid Empire detection. The message would reach Earth in 6 hours, but first, she needed to be absolutely certain of what she was seeing. "Computer, analyze Empire fleet movement patterns over the past 12 months. Cross-reference with known barrier penetration research. Calculate probability of Earth detection if current trends continue." The computer processed the data for several minutes. When the result appeared, Amy wished she had been wrong. Probability of successful Earth detection within 6 months, 73%. Probability within 12 months, 91%. Paul gripped his workstation tightly. "They're going to find us." Amy stared at the data, thinking through the implications. For 10 years, Earth had hidden behind the quantum barriers, growing stronger and preparing for the day when hiding would no longer be possible. That day was coming faster than anyone had expected. She pulled up another screen showing Empire expansion over the past decade. Red areas marked worlds that had been absorbed into the Empire. Yellow areas showed worlds under evaluation for integration. The map looked like a spreading infection, consuming everything in its path. "How many species have they taken since we went into hiding?" Paul asked. Amy checked the database. 47 confirmed. We estimate at least 60 more that we haven't been able to verify. Each number represented billions of lives. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, reduced to resource extraction and scattered populations. The Empire's efficiency was terrifying. "Look at this," Amy said, highlighting a section of space near the galactic core. "These systems all went dark in the past year. No communications, no energy signatures, nothing. The Empire isn't just conquering anymore. They're strip mining entire regions." Paul studied the dark zones. "They're accelerating. Why?" Amy had been wondering the same thing. The Empire's expansion had always been steady but gradual. Recently, it had become much more aggressive. Resources that used to be carefully extracted over decades were being seized in years or months. "I think they're preparing for something," she said. "All this technology they're gathering, all these resources they're hoarding, it's not just for expansion anymore. They're building up for a war." "A war against who?" Paul asked. Amy pulled up another set of intercepts, these ones more heavily encrypted. The translation was partial, but the meaning was clear enough. unknown resistance elements, technological signatures inconsistent with known species, recommend maximum resource allocation, potential threat to imperial stability. Us, Amy said quietly. They're preparing for war against us. Paul was quiet for a long moment. Earth needs to know about this immediately. Amy finalized her report and attached all the relevant data. Fleet movements, technology assessments, resource allocations, projected timelines. Everything that Earth's leaders would need to make their decision. The message was simple and direct. They're coming anyway. As she sent the transmission, Amy thought about Earth hidden behind its barriers. For 10 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. They had unified their planet, advanced their technology, and built defenses that the Empire had never seen. But was it enough? "What do you think will happen?" Paul asked. Amy looked at the screens showing Empire ships moving inexorably toward their sector. Dozens of civilizations had tried to resist the Empire over the centuries. All of them had failed, but none of them had been human. "I think the Empire is about to learn why Earth closed its borders," she said. The monitoring station continued its silent watch as the message raced toward Earth. Soon, humanity would have to decide whether to strengthen their barriers and hope for more time, or do something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Amy had a feeling she knew which choice they would make. After all, humans had never been very good at backing down from a fight. General Kyle Martinez stood before the massive holographic display in the Global Defense Command Center, watching red dots move slowly across the star map. Each dot represented an Empire ship, and they were all heading toward Earth's hidden location, Amy. Fletcher's warning had arrived 6 hours ago. 3 words that had changed everything. They're coming anyway. The command center buzzed with activity as representatives from every nation on Earth worked together with a unity that would have seemed impossible just 20 years ago. The alien threat had done something that centuries of human conflict could not. It had made humanity truly work as one. "Status report," Kyle called out. Dr. Sophie Williams stepped forward from the research division. She was young, brilliant, and had spent the past decade developing technologies that the Empire had never seen. Her work would either save humanity or prove that 10 years of preparation hadn't been enough. "The Empire fleet will reach scanning range in approximately 4 months, Sophie reported. "Our analysis confirms they have technology specifically designed to penetrate quantum barriers. We estimate a 60% chance they'll find us within 6 months of arrival." Kyle nodded grimly. "Defense options?" "We can strengthen the barriers," Sophie continued. "Double the power output, add additional layers of protection. That might buy us another year, maybe 2. "But?" Kyle could hear the hesitation in her voice. Sophie pulled up new data on the holographic display. "Hiding longer means they'll be better prepared when they do find us. Every month we wait, they gather more resources and develop better detection methods. Eventually, they'll find us no matter how well we hide." Commander Ben Taylor stepped forward from the Fleet Command section. He was one of Earth's most experienced military leaders, and had been overseeing the construction of humanity's new space forces. "There is another option," Ben said quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he was about to suggest, but hearing it spoken aloud would make it real. "We drop the barriers ourselves," Ben continued. "We meet them in open space on our terms, instead of waiting to be discovered on theirs." Kyle studied the faces around him. Fear, determination, and something else. Excitement. For 10 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Their technology was ready. Their people were united. The question was whether they were brave enough to take the biggest risk in human history. "Sophie, what do we have that they don't?" Kyle asked. Sophie's eyes lit up as she activated another section of the display. "Everything, sir. Our entire technological development has been independent of Empire influence. They've been using the same basic principles for thousands of years, just refined and expanded. We've been innovating from scratch." The display showed Earth's achievements over the past decade. Fusion reactors that were smaller and more efficient than anything in the Empire's database. Artificial intelligence systems that could think and adapt in real time. Ships that could modify their own design during combat. Most importantly, Sophie continued, we've weaponized our own isolation. Empire technology relies on centralized control and standardized systems. Our technology is designed to be independent and adaptive. When they scan our ships, they won't understand what they're seeing. Ben activated his section of the display, showing Earth's new fleet. The ships were unlike anything in galactic history. Sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to blur the line between machine and living organism. "The UES Defiance is our flagship," Ben explained. "It's not just a ship, it's a learning system. Every encounter makes it smarter, faster, more dangerous. The Empire has never faced technology that evolves during combat." Kyle walked closer to examine the ship designs. They were beautiful in their strangeness, clearly human in origin, but unlike anything Earth had ever built before, the barriers went up. "How many ships are ready?" he asked. 57 combat vessels of various classes, Ben reported, plus support ships, mobile shipyards, and specialized platforms. Not enough to match the Empire's numbers, but enough to make them reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities. Dr. Lisa Grant joined the group, carrying reports from her Xenological Research Division. She had been studying Empire psychology and tactics for years, trying to understand how they thought and fought. "There's something else to consider," Lisa said. "The Empire isn't just militarily powerful. They're psychologically dominant. Every species they've encountered has eventually submitted because resistance seemed hopeless. They expect fear and surrender." She pulled up psychological profiles of Empire leadership. They've never faced opponents who choose to fight when they could hide. The Empire's entire strategy is based on overwhelming force and inevitable victory. They don't know how to handle enemies who refuse to be intimidated. Kyle considered all the information. Earth's technology was advanced and unique. Their people were united and determined. Their enemies were powerful but predictable. The question was whether humanity was ready to bet their entire species on 10 years of preparation. "What about allies?" he asked. Lisa smiled for the first time in the briefing. "That's the best part. Our deep space monitors have been intercepting communications from resistance groups across the galaxy. There are others out there, species, that escaped Empire control, worlds that went into hiding, populations that were scattered but not destroyed." She showed intercepts of coded transmissions, fragments of hope scattered across dark space. "They're waiting for someone to prove that the Empire can be beaten. If we can demonstrate that resistance is possible, we won't be fighting alone," Kyle finished. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed the implications. This wasn't just about Earth's survival anymore. This was about giving hope to every species that had ever dreamed of freedom from the Empire's control. Kyle walked back to the star map, studying the approaching red dots. For generations, humanity had looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They had dreamed of joining a galactic civilization, becoming part of something larger than themselves. Now they knew what was out there. The Empire was a machine that consumed worlds and crushed dreams. But it was also a bully that had never been properly challenged. "Recommendations?" Kyle asked. Ben was the first to speak. "We drop the barriers in 2 months. Give ourselves time to deploy the fleet and choose our battleground. Meet them at the edge of the solar system with everything we have." Sophie nodded agreement. "Our technology is ready. Our people are ready. Waiting longer just gives them more. Time to prepare countermeasures." Lisa added her support. "The psychological impact of humans choosing to fight will be enormous, not just on the Empire, but on every oppressed species watching." Kyle looked around the room one more time. These people represented the best of humanity: scientists, soldiers, diplomats, and engineers who had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment. They were asking him to make a decision that would echo through galactic history. "What does Earth's population think?" he asked. "The polls are clear," Lisa reported. 87% support active resistance rather than continued hiding. "Humans don't like bullies, and they don't like being told to stay in their rooms." Kyle smiled at that. It was such a human response. Face overwhelming odds with determination and a touch of defiance. The Empire probably couldn't understand that kind of thinking. He turned back to the star map and made his decision. "Begin fleet deployment immediately," he ordered. "Sophie, I want every advantage our technology can give us. Ben, prepare for combat operations in open space. Lisa, start broadcasting our message to those resistance groups." The room erupted in controlled activity as people moved to implement his orders. Kyle remained at the star map, watching the red dots approach Earth's position. For 10 years, humanity had hidden behind barriers, growing stronger in secret. Now it was time to show the galaxy what they had learned. The Empire expected to find a frightened species ready for integration. Instead, they would find humans who had spent their isolation very well indeed. Admiral Zekthara of the Hegemony Council stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the final phases of barrier penetration. For months, his research fleet had been systematically dismantling the quantum field that hid the lost world. It was tedious work, but the Empire was nothing if not patient. The human world had vanished 10 years ago, just as they were about to join the Empire. No species had ever done such a thing before. It was unprecedented, fascinating, and ultimately futile. All worlds eventually submitted to the Empire's will. "Barrier integrity is down to 12%, reported his science officer, a Coralli female whose species had been integrated 40 years ago. "Complete penetration in approximately 6 hours. Zekthara nodded approvingly. The humans had created an impressive defensive system, but Empire science was built on the knowledge of thousands of species. No single world could hide from that. Accumulated wisdom forever. "What do we expect to find?" asked Commander Veltar, his tactical officer. "A frightened population that has spent 10 years realizing they cannot hide forever," Zekthara replied. "They will be grateful for reintegration into galactic civilization. Their isolation has probably taught them the value of Imperial membership." He pulled up the analysis files on human capabilities. During their brief contact, the humans had shown impressive adaptability and innovation. They had grasped complex concepts quickly and even suggested improvements to some Imperial technologies. Such talent would be valuable in the Empire's research divisions. "Begin preparation for integration protocols," Zekthara ordered. "Standard approach. Peaceful contact, demonstration of Imperial benevolence, gradual integration. These humans showed promise. I want them handled carefully. The bridge crew began their practiced routine. The Empire had perfected this process over millennia. First, overwhelm the target species with displays of superior technology. Then, offer partnership and protection. Finally, slowly absorb everything valuable while making the process seem beneficial. "Sir," called out the sensor operator, a young Thraxian, "barrier collapse is complete. The system is now fully visible." Zekthara leaned forward expectantly. After months of work, they would finally see what the humans had been hiding. The main screen shifted to show the human star system in full detail. Everything looked normal. A yellow star with several planets, including the blue-green world where humans lived. Orbital stations, asteroid mining operations, the usual signs of a developing civilization. Initial scans show... The sensor operator paused, confusion evident in his voice. "Sir, there's a ship." "A ship?" Zekthara frowned. "Explain." "A single vessel, sir. It's positioned at the edge of the system directly in our approach path. It appears to be waiting for us." Zekthara stared at the screen as the image resolved. It was indeed a human ship, but unlike anything in their database. The design was sleek and organic, almost living in appearance. It hung motionless in space, as if it had been expecting their arrival. "Run a full analysis," he ordered. "I want to know everything about that vessel." The tactical systems went to work, scanning the human ship with every sensor the Empire possessed. The results made no sense. "Sir, the ship is actively jamming our scans," reported Commander Veltar. "Our sensors can detect its presence but cannot penetrate its hull or determine its capabilities." Zekthara had never heard of such technology. Imperial sensors were designed to penetrate any known defense system. How could a single human vessel block the accumulated knowledge of 1,000 species? "Open communications," he ordered. The main screen shifted to show the interior of the human ship's bridge. A human male in a dark uniform looked back at them with calm, steady eyes. No fear, no awe at the sight of Imperial power, just quiet confidence. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Ship Defiance," the human said. "You were told to leave us alone." Zekthara activated his own communication system. "I am Admiral Zekthara of the Imperial Fleet. This system is under Imperial jurisdiction. You will stand down and prepare for peaceful reintegration." Captain Morrison's expression didn't change. No. The simple refusal hung in the air like a challenge. Zekthara had expected many responses: fear, negotiation, even desperate aggression, but not this calm, absolute rejection. "You do not understand," Zekthara explained patiently. "The Empire encompasses thousands of species across the galaxy. Resistance is neither necessary nor possible. We offer you partnership, protection, and access to advanced technology." "We've seen what your partnership looks like," Morrison replied. 47 species absorbed since we went into hiding. Entire civilizations reduced to resource extraction. We're not interested." Zekthara was genuinely surprised. How did the humans know about Imperial expansion? They had been isolated for a decade. "Your information is incomplete," he said. "Those species chose integration for their own benefit. The Empire provides order, stability, and prosperity to all members." Morrison's smile was cold. "Tell that to the Kalari." "Oh, wait, you can't. You scattered them across the galaxy last month." "Hey!" Chill ran down Zekthara's spine. The Kalari integration was classified information. How could this isolated human know about it? "Surrender your vessel," Zekthara ordered, his patience evaporating. "Submit to Imperial authority, and you will be treated with appropriate consideration." "I have a better idea," Morrison said. "Turn around and leave. Don't come back." Zekthara had heard enough. No species spoke to the Empire this way. He gestured to his tactical officer, who began charging the ship's weapons systems. "You have 10 seconds to comply," Zekthara announced. Morrison's image disappeared from the screen. Instead, a new voice came through the communications system. Artificial, but somehow alive. "This is the AI system of the UES Defiance. You have been warned. Hostile action will be met with appropriate response." Zekthara laughed. "An artificial intelligence?" The Empire had developed AI technology thousands of years ago, then abandoned it as too unpredictable. These humans were using obsolete technology. "Fire warning shots," he ordered. The Eternal Dominion's energy cannons discharged, sending brilliant beams of light toward the human vessel. They were not aimed to destroy, merely to demonstrate Imperial power. The beams struck the Defiance and simply vanished. No explosion, no damage, no effect whatsoever. The human ship continued to hang motionless in space. "What happened?" Zekthara demanded. Commander Veltar stared at his instruments in confusion. "Sir, our weapons made contact with the target, but all energy was absorbed. Their shielding is based on principles we don't recognize." Before Zekthara could respond, the Defiance moved. It didn't accelerate gradually like normal ships. It simply shifted position, appearing several kilometers away in an instant. Then it fired back. The human weapon was unlike anything in Imperial records. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, it seemed to tear reality itself. The shot passed through the Eternal Dominion's shields, as if they weren't there, struck the hull, and sent systems throughout the ship into chaos. "Damage report!" Zekthara shouted. "Shields are down!" Veltar reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Main weapons are offline. How did they penetrate our defenses?" The Defiance moved again, this time appearing directly above the Imperial flagship. Morrison's voice came through the communication system again. "Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles," he explained calmly. "Our weapons don't use energy or projectiles. They use principles your scientists haven't discovered yet." Zekthara stared at the tactical display in shock. A single human vessel had disabled the most advanced ship in the Imperial fleet with one shot. It was impossible. "This is impossible," he said aloud. "No," Morrison replied. "This is what happens when you give an innovative species 10 years to prepare. We tried isolation. Now you get innovation." More human ships began appearing throughout the system, not arriving from distant locations, but simply materializing from what appeared to be empty space. Each one was different in design, each one clearly based on principles the Empire had never seen. "Sir," the sensor operator called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human system. They have weapons platforms we never detected, ships we never saw, technology that doesn't match any known specifications." Zekthara realized with growing horror that the humans had not been hiding in fear for the past decade. They had been preparing for war. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance," he ordered. "Alert the High Council. We need reinforcements." As the Imperial fleet pulled back, Morrison's final message followed them. "Tell your Emperor that humanity is no longer hiding. If the Empire wants Earth, they'll have to come and take it. But they should know, we've had 10 years to think about how to stop them." The communication ended, leaving Zekathara staring at a star system that had just rewritten everything the Empire thought it knew about warfare. For the first time in his career, he began transmitting a message he had never expected to send. Urgent. Priority to Imperial Command. Request immediate deployment of the war fleet. The humans are not what we expected. Emperor Valdris IX stood before the great window of his throne room, staring out at the sprawling capital city of the Galactic Empire. For 3,000 years, his dynasty had ruled over the greatest civilization in known history. Never in all. That time had a single ship retreated from a lone enemy vessel. Until today, Admiral Zekthera's report played again on the massive screen behind the throne. The impossible defeat of an Imperial flagship by a species that should have been begging for mercy. The Emperor watched the tactical footage for the 5th time, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Explain this to me again," Valdris commanded. High Counselor Mekrath, the Empire's chief military strategist, activated the holographic display. The tall, crystalline being had coordinated 1,000 successful conquests over his career. He had never encountered anything like this. "The human vessel appears to use technology based on principles we do not understand," Mekrath reported. "Their weapons ignore our defensive systems completely. Their shields absorb our attacks without apparent limit. Most disturbing, their ships can apparently appear and disappear at will." Valdris studied the tactical data. The human ship had moved in ways that violated everything the Empire knew about space travel. It didn't accelerate, it simply existed in a new location. It didn't fire energy weapons. It manipulated reality itself. "How is this possible?" Valdris asked. "We have the accumulated knowledge of over 800 species. How can one isolated world develop technology we've never seen?" High Counselor Yarthek, the Empire's chief scientist, moved forward. The ancient Korethian had studied the technologies of countless civilizations and integrated them into imperial science. "I believe the isolation is precisely why they succeeded," Yarthek explained. "For thousands of years, the Empire has developed technology by combining and refining existing principles. We improve upon what we know. The humans were forced to innovate from first principles. The Emperor considered this. You're saying our strength became our weakness?" "Exactly. Our technology is standardized, predictable, based on established science. The humans developed along completely different paths. When our systems encounter their technology, they have no reference point for understanding or countering it." Valdris turned from the window to face his council. The throne room was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all of whom had contributed to the Empire's technological dominance. Now that dominance had been challenged by a species they had dismissed as primitive, "What do we know about human capabilities during their isolation period?" he asked. Yarthek activated another display showing intelligence gathered from deep space monitoring. They unified their entire planet under a single government. They developed fusion technology that exceeds our efficiency ratings. They created artificial intelligence systems that appear to be truly sentient. Most importantly, they prepared specifically for conflict with us. The Emperor studied the data. During their brief contact 10 years ago, humans had seemed promising but unremarkable. Intelligent, adaptable, but well within normal parameters for developing species. This transformation was unprecedented. "How many ships do they have?" Valdris asked. Mekrath's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "Unknown. Our sensors detected at least 50 vessels, but they appeared from concealment so complete that we cannot determine total fleet strength. They could have hundreds of ships hidden throughout their system. Weaknesses? Also unknown. Our weapons were completely ineffective, so we have no data on their defensive limitations. They appear to have eliminated every tactical advantage the Empire normally possesses. Valdris walked to his throne, a massive structure carved from a single crystal found in the ruins of the first species the Empire had conquered. 3,000 years of victory, and now this. Recommendations? He asked. Mekrath was the first to respond. Deploy the war fleet immediately. Overwhelming force has never failed us. Regardless of their technological advantages, they cannot match our numbers. High Counselor Velaman, the Empire's chief intelligence officer, disagreed. Respectfully, that approach has risks. Our intelligence suggests there are resistance movements throughout the galaxy waiting to see how this conflict develops. If humans demonstrate that the Empire can be beaten, other species might rebel. Valdris finished. Yes, I've considered that, which is why we cannot allow the humans to achieve any further victories. He activated the throne's communication systems, sending orders directly to fleet commanders across the galaxy. Within hours, ships would begin converging on Imperial staging areas. Mobilize everything, Valdris commanded. The war fleet, the colonial defense forces, the core system. Guards, I want 5,000 ships ready for deployment within 1 month. The council members exchanged glances. 5,000 ships was more than the Empire had ever deployed against a single target. It was enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. Sire, Yarthek ventured carefully, such a massive deployment will leave other territories vulnerable. If the resistance movements will do nothing if humanity is crushed quickly and decisively, Valdris interrupted. The galaxy must see that challenging the Empire results in total annihilation. One overwhelming victory will prevent 100 rebellions. As the council dispersed to implement his orders, Valdris remained on his throne, studying intelligence. Reports from across the galaxy. The humans weren't the only problem. Deep space monitoring had detected increased activity in dozens of sectors. Species that had been quiet for decades were suddenly transmitting coded messages. Worlds that had submitted peacefully were showing signs of unrest. Resource shipments from outer territories had declined as local populations became less cooperative. The Emperor pulled up a classified report from his intelligence services. Over the past year, Imperial forces had lost contact with 17 deep space outposts. Officially, they were classified as equipment failures or accidents. Privately, Valdris suspected they were being eliminated by resistance groups. For the first time in Imperial history, the galaxy was watching to see if their masters could be beaten. Valdris activated another communication channel, this one connecting him to Admiral Zarthul, commander of the war fleet. The massive hegemony warrior appeared on the screen, his scarred features reflecting a lifetime of conquest. "Your orders, Emperor," Zarthul growled. "Prepare for the largest military operation in Imperial history," Valdris replied. "I want every weapon, every ship, every advantage we possess deployed against the human homeworld. This rebellion ends before it begins." Understood. Rules of engagement? Valdris considered the question. Standard Imperial practice was to offer surrender terms, allow for peaceful integration when possible. But this situation was beyond standard. Practice. Total victory. Demonstrate to the galaxy that challenging the Empire has consequences. Make examples that will prevent future rebellions. Zarthul's expression showed approval. "It will be done, Emperor," The humans will regret their defiance. As the communication ended, Valdris turned back to the window overlooking his capital. 3,000 years of imperial rule had created the most stable, prosperous civilization in galactic history. Billions of beings lived peaceful lives under imperial protection, enjoying technologies and opportunities their primitive ancestors could never have imagined. The humans threatened all of that. Not through military might. One world could never match the Empire's resources. They threatened it through hope. By proving that resistance was possible, they gave others the courage to try. That could not be allowed. Valdris activated his personal communication system, sending a message to intelligence operatives throughout the galaxy. Any species that showed signs of rebellion would be dealt with immediately. Any worlds that supported human resistance would face consequences. The galaxy would learn that the Empire's mercy had limits, but as he sent the orders, a small part of him wondered if the humans had calculated this response. They had spent 10 years preparing for conflict with the Empire. Surely they understood that challenging imperial authority would result in overwhelming retaliation, which meant they either had a plan to survive such an assault, or they had decided that dying free was better than living as slaves. Either possibility was deeply troubling to an emperor who had never encountered either one before. Valdris stood alone in his throne room, master of the greatest empire in galactic history, and for the first time in 3,000 years of imperial rule, he felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. Colonel Nick Davis crouched behind the twisted metal remains of what had once been an imperial mining station. Around him, fighters from 12 different species worked together with a coordination that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Today, they were about to prove that the Empire was not invincible. The Kepler mining colonies had been under imperial control for 15 years. The 3 planets in the system held some of the richest mineral deposits in this sector of the galaxy, and the Empire had been systematically stripping them bare while using the native population as forced labor. Now, for the first time in imperial history, those colonies were about to be liberated. "Strike Team Alpha in position," reported Lieutenant Amy Fletcher through the communication implant in Nick's ear. Her voice was calm despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Strike Team Beta ready," added Commander Ben Taylor from his position on the opposite side of the mining complex. Nick checked his tactical display. Human forces were scattered throughout the system, working alongside resistance fighters who had emerged from hiding once they learned that humanity was actually fighting the Empire. The coordination was perfect, each team knowing exactly when and where to strike. "This is Control," came the voice of Dr. Sophie Williams from the command ship hidden in the asteroid belt. "Imperial reinforcements are en route. You have 18 minutes before they arrive. 18 minutes to do what no one had ever done before: defeat an entrenched imperial position and free an enslaved population. All teams, begin the liberation," Nick ordered. The attack began simultaneously across all 3 planets. Human ships appeared from concealment, their adaptive technology allowing them to strike imperial positions without warning. But this wasn't just a human operation. Alien resistance fighters emerged from caves, hidden bases, and underground shelters to join the assault. Nick's team moved through the mining station with practiced efficiency. The Imperial Guards had never faced opponents like this before. Human weapons bypassed their energy shields. Human tactics adapted faster than Imperial training could counter. Most importantly, the local population actively helped instead of cowering in fear. "The workers are breaking their restraints," Amy reported from the main detention center. Someone sabotaged the control systems from the inside. Nick smiled as he planted charges on the station's power core. The Empire relied on fear to control their slave populations. When that fear was replaced with hope, their entire system collapsed. An Imperial trooper appeared around the corner, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, a mining tool thrown by one of the liberated workers struck him in the head. The freed slave looked at Nick and nodded. "Thank you for coming," the alien said in broken standard. "We thought no one would ever challenge them." "Everyone deserves to be free," Nick replied, helping the worker to his feet. The charges detonated, right on schedule, sending the mining station's power core into overload. Across the system, similar explosions marked the destruction of Imperial infrastructure. But more importantly, they marked the beginning of something the Empire had never seen: a successful rebellion. "Control, this is Alpha Team," Nick reported, as his forces withdrew to their extraction point. "Primary objectives complete. The colonies are free." "Confirmed, Alpha Team," Sophie's voice came back with barely contained excitement. "Imperial control infrastructure is down on all 3 planets. Population centers report they are no longer under Imperial authority." Nick's team reached the extraction zone where human ships waited to evacuate anyone who wanted to leave. But most of the freed slaves chose to stay and rebuild their worlds as free societies. "Sir," Amy called out, pointing to the sky, "you need to see this." Nick looked up to see something unprecedented in Imperial history. An Imperial patrol fleet had arrived to reassert control over the colonies, but instead of the usual swift victory, they found themselves facing unified resistance. The local defense forces, now equipped with human technology and fighting alongside human advisors, were holding their own against Imperial ships. "The Empire doesn't know how to fight opponents who refuse to surrender," Ben observed as he joined them at the landing zone. Nick watched the battle in orbit with growing amazement. The Imperial ships were more powerful individually, but they couldn't adapt to the constantly changing tactics of the combined human-alien force. Every time the Empire adjusted their strategy, their opponents had already moved to something new. "Control. Are you seeing this?" Nick asked. "Confirmed," Sophie replied. "The Imperial fleet is retreating. They can't establish control against organized resistance." The implications were staggering. For thousands of years, Imperial fleets had been unstoppable. No species had ever successfully defended against them. Now, 3 mining colonies with minimal defenses had forced an Imperial retreat. "This is going to change everything," Amy said quietly. She was right. Within hours, news of the Kepler liberation would spread throughout the galaxy. Every oppressed species would know that the Empire could be beaten. Every resistance cell would have proof that fighting back was possible. Nick's communication implant activated with an urgent message from Earth. General Kyle Martinez's voice was tight with controlled excitement. "All liberation forces, be advised. We're receiving communications from resistance groups across the galaxy. 17 different species have requested immediate assistance. 23 more are asking for weapons and tactical support." Nick felt a chill of realization. The liberation of Kepler wasn't just a victory. It was the beginning of a galactic uprising. "Sir," he asked, "are we ready for that?" "We're about to find out," Martinez replied. "The Empire is mobilizing everything they have. Intelligence estimates 5,000 ships heading for Earth within the month, but they're also pulling forces from every occupied system to do it." Nick understood immediately. In order to crush humanity, the Empire was leaving their other territories vulnerable. It was exactly what Earth's strategists had hoped for. "New orders?" he asked. "Continue liberation operations. Every Imperial garrison we eliminate is one less ship they can send against Earth. Every species we free is one more ally in the fight." As Nick's team prepared to depart for their next target, he watched the freed populations of Kepler beginning the work of rebuilding their society. Children who had been born into slavery were playing freely for the first time in their lives. Adults who had never imagined freedom were making plans for their own future. "You know what the strangest part is?" Amy asked as they boarded the transport ship. "What?" "The Empire created their own worst enemy. If they had left Earth alone, none of this would have happened. We would have joined their civilization and probably never questioned how it worked." Nick considered that as their ship lifted off. She was right. The Empire's attempt to force humanity into submission had created something they had never faced before, an opponent who understood their weaknesses and had the technology to exploit them. More importantly, humanity had become something the Empire couldn't comprehend, liberators who genuinely wanted to help others rather than control them. "Control, this is Alpha Team departing Kepler system," Nick reported. "Ready for next assignment." "Copy, Alpha Team. Proceed to the Vega colonies. Intelligence reports. Imperial forces are evacuating their primary bases there. Local resistance. Needs immediate support before Imperial reinforcements arrive." As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Nick reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. Humanity had gone from hiding behind barriers to leading a galactic revolution. The Empire had gone from invincible rulers to desperate defenders, trying to hold together a crumbling system. But the real change was in the galaxy itself. For the first time in Imperial history, hope was spreading faster than fear. Species that had been isolated and oppressed for generations were working together. Technologies that had been suppressed were being shared freely. The Empire had spent thousands of years building a system based on the belief that resistance was futile. Humanity was proving them wrong, one liberated world at a time. And they were just getting started. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the largest fleet in galactic history approach Earth's solar system. 5,000 Imperial ships stretched across space like a metallic storm cloud, their combined firepower, enough to sterilize entire star systems. Emperor Valdris had brought everything. War fleets that had conquered galaxies, planet-killer weapons that had ended civilizations, and technology refined through thousands of years of domination. This was the Empire's final answer to humanity's defiance. "All ships report ready, sir," reported Commander Ben Taylor from the Fleet Command Center. "We have 300 vessels positioned throughout the system, 300 against 5,000. By any reasonable calculation, humanity was about to be exterminated. But Jake had stopped believing in reasonable calculations the day Earth decided to hide from the galaxy. "Dr. Williams, status on the surprise packages?" Jake asked. Dr. Sophie Williams looked up from her engineering station with a smile that was both nervous and excited. "All systems operational, sir. The Empire is about to discover that 10 years of innovation beats 10,000 years of repetition." Jake activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Morrison. You know what we're facing. You know what's at stake. Every oppressed species in the galaxy is watching this battle. Today, we find out if freedom is stronger than fear." The Imperial fleet had arranged itself in a classic formation. Heavy battleships in front, support vessels behind, planet killers in the center ready to finish what the battle fleet started. It was a formation that had never failed in the Empire's history. Admiral Zarthul's voice came through on the standard communication channel. "Human fleet, you are outnumbered 16 to 1. Surrender immediately and your species will be granted integration with appropriate consideration for your technological contributions." Jake opened his response channel. "Admiral, you had your chance to leave us alone. Now you get to see what happens when you back humans into a corner." "You cannot win this engagement," Zarthul replied. "No species has ever successfully resisted Imperial authority. Submit now and avoid unnecessary destruction." "You're right about one thing," Jake said. "No species has ever done this before. But then again, none of them were human." The communication ended. Jake turned to his tactical officer. "Amy, show them what we've learned." Lieutenant Commander Amy Fletcher activated the Defiance's new defensive systems. Across the human fleet, reality seemed to ripple as hundreds of ships suddenly became invisible to Imperial sensors. "Impossible," came Zarthul's voice over the emergency channel. "Our sensors show empty space." "That's the idea," Jake replied calmly. The Imperial fleet opened fire at the last known positions of human ships. Thousands of energy beams and projectiles filled space with deadly light. None of them found targets. "Phase 2, Jake ordered. Human. Ships began appearing throughout the Imperial formation, not approaching from outside, but materializing inside their defensive perimeter. The Empire's greatest advantage had always been their ability to control the battlefield through superior range and firepower. Now they found enemies appearing at point-blank range. The battle was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Imperial ships designed for long-range engagements found themselves in close combat against opponents who ignored conventional physics. Human weapons that manipulated space-time itself tore through Imperial defenses as if they didn't exist. But the Empire's greatest shock came when their own technology began turning against them. "Sir," Amy reported with barely contained excitement, "the adaptive AI systems are working perfectly. Every Imperial weapon that hits our shields is being analyzed and converted to our use." Jake watched in amazement as human ships began firing, Imperial-style energy beams alongside their own exotic weapons. But these weren't copies. They were improvements enhanced by human innovation and AI adaptation. "Engineering report," Jake called out. Chief Engineer Paul Davis responded from the Defiance's core systems. "Sir, the ship is literally evolving during combat. Our AI is learning from every Imperial attack and developing new countermeasures in real time. We're becoming more dangerous with every exchange." This was humanity's ultimate weapon. Not any single technology, but their ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. While Imperial ships followed programmed tactical responses, human vessels were rewriting their own capabilities moment by moment. "Admiral," Jake opened communication with Zarthul again. "Ready to reconsider your position?" The response came in the form of the Empire's most desperate gambit. Planet-killer weapons, normally reserved for sterilizing rebellious worlds, were brought to bear against the human fleet. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered. "They're bringing out the big guns." The planet killers fired, sending beams of concentrated destruction toward Earth itself. If humanity's fleet was too difficult to target, the Empire would simply destroy what they were protecting. But the beams never reached their target. Human ships positioned themselves in the path of the weapons, their adaptive shields absorbing energies designed to crack planets. More incredibly, they began redirecting that power back at the Imperial fleet. "This is impossible," Zarthul's voice carried notes of panic now. "No technology can absorb planet-killer energy levels." "No Imperial technology," Jake corrected. But then, we're not using Imperial technology. Dr. Williams activated the final phase of humanity's battle plan. Hidden throughout the solar system, devices that had been disguised as asteroids and debris suddenly came online. The entire battlefield became a giant laboratory, with human AI systems analyzing every aspect of Imperial technology in real time. "Sir," Amy reported with amazement in her voice, "we're not just winning. We're learning everything they know while we fight them." Jake understood the implications immediately. This battle wasn't just about defeating the Imperial fleet, it was about downloading 10,000 years of accumulated galactic knowledge and improving upon it. The turning point came when Imperial ships began switching sides. "What's happening?" Jake asked as his sensors showed several Imperial vessels changing their targeting patterns. "The AI has cracked their communication systems," Paul reported. "We're broadcasting the truth about Imperial oppression directly to their crews. Some of them are choosing freedom." Jake watched in wonder as ships from a dozen different species began turning their weapons against their Imperial commanders. The Empire's greatest weakness was finally being exploited. They had forced so many species into service that their own fleets were filled with unwilling slaves. "Admiral Zarthul." Jake opened communication one final time. "Your fleet is falling apart. Your technology has been surpassed. Your crews are abandoning you. How much more destruction are you willing to cause?" The response was silence for several long moments. Then, in a voice that carried the weight of civilizational defeat, Zarthul spoke. "Human Commander, I have never seen anything like this. How is such power possible?" "It's not power," Jake replied. "It's freedom. When people choose to fight for something they believe in, they can accomplish the impossible." The Imperial fleet began to withdraw, but it was too late. Human ships pursued them not to destroy, but to continue their liberation efforts. Every Imperial vessel that surrendered was offered the same choice: join the growing alliance of free worlds or return to the Empire with a message. As the battle wound down, Jake stood on his bridge looking at a solar system filled with ships from dozens of species, all flying together as equals. The Empire's invincible fleet had been turned into the foundation of a new galactic alliance. "Sir," Amy reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from Imperial forces in over 200 systems. Word of the victory is spreading faster than their remaining fleets can respond." Jake nodded, then opened a channel to Earth. "Command, this is Morrison. The Imperial fleet has been defeated. The solar system is secure." General Martinez's voice carried wonder and relief. "Confirmed defiance." "Jake, do you realize what you've just accomplished?" Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about all the species that would wake up tomorrow in a galaxy where the Empire was no longer invincible. "We kept our promise, sir. We showed the galaxy that bullies can be beaten." But even as he spoke, Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Empire still controlled most of the galaxy, and they would not accept defeat easily. The real war was just starting. However, for the first time in galactic history, that war would be fought between equals. 1 year after the fall of the Imperial fleet at Earth, Ambassador Lisa Grant walked through the halls of what had once been Emperor Valdris's throne room. The massive chamber now hosted the first Galactic Assembly of Free Worlds, with representatives from over 1,000 species gathered not as subjects, but as equals. The transformation was remarkable. Where once stood symbols of Imperial dominance, now hung banners representing the diverse civilizations that had chosen freedom over submission. The throne itself had been removed, replaced by a circular assembly hall where no single voice could claim supremacy over others. Dr. Grant, called out a familiar voice. Lisa turned to see Admiral Zekathara approaching, wearing the blue uniform of the Galactic Defense Corps rather than the black of Imperial service. Admiral, Lisa replied with a smile. How are the integration efforts proceeding? Zekathara's expression showed a mixture of wonder and disbelief. Better than anyone expected. Former Imperial territories are declaring independence daily. Most are requesting membership in the Free Worlds Alliance. I never imagined I would live to see the Empire's authority crumble so completely. Lisa nodded. The speed of the Empire's collapse had surprised everyone, including humanity. Once species realized that resistance was possible, the carefully maintained system of fear and submission had unraveled like a chain reaction across the galaxy. Any word from the core worlds? She asked. Emperor Valdris has withdrawn to the innermost systems with his most loyal forces, Zekathara reported. Perhaps 100 worlds still acknowledge Imperial authority. He calls himself ruler of a galactic empire that now controls less than 1% of the galaxy. They walked together toward the main assembly chamber, where Captain Jake Morrison was scheduled to address the gathered representatives. Lisa reflected on how much had changed since Earth first closed its borders. The man who had commanded humanity's first victory over Imperial forces now served as coordinator of liberation efforts across the galaxy. But more importantly, he had become a symbol of something the galaxy had never seen before. Power that genuinely sought to liberate rather than dominate. Lisa, called out Dr. Sophie Williams as she approached with a data pad full of reports. You need to see the latest technological integration statistics. Sophie's enthusiasm was infectious as always. As head of the Galactic Research Initiative, she oversaw the sharing of knowledge between formerly oppressed civilizations. The results had been extraordinary. With Imperial restrictions removed, innovation is accelerating exponentially, Sophie explained, showing charts that demonstrated rapid advancement across multiple fields. Species that were forced to suppress their research for centuries are finally free to explore their ideas. Lisa studied the data with amazement. Medical advances that extended lifespans across species. Energy technologies that made Imperial fusion systems look primitive. Communication methods that allowed instant coordination across galactic distances. The Empire wasn't just politically oppressive, Sophie continued. They were scientifically stagnant. They stopped real innovation thousands of years ago and just recycled the discoveries of conquered species. They entered the assembly chamber as Jake took the podium. The sight never ceased to amaze Lisa. Beings from across the galaxy, many, of whom had been enemies for generations, working together with a cooperation that seemed impossible just years before. Representatives of the Free Worlds Alliance, Jake began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. 1 year ago, many of you lived under Imperial rule. You were told that resistance was futile, that the Empire's dominance was inevitable, that freedom was a luxury your species could not afford. A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. Many of these beings had lived their entire lives believing exactly that. Today, you are here as free citizens of independent worlds working together to build something the galaxy has never seen, a civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Lisa looked around the chamber at faces that reflected every possible form of life. Some were species she had studied during Earth's isolation. Others were completely unknown, emerging from hiding places where they had preserved their independence through centuries of imperial expansion. But our work is not finished, Jake continued. Yes, we have broken the Empire's military power. Yes, we have freed hundreds of worlds from oppression. But the real victory will come when we prove that freedom creates better outcomes than tyranny. He activated the chamber's display systems, showing maps of the former Imperial territory. Red zones marked areas still under Imperial control. Blue zones showed Free World's Alliance members. But most interesting were the green zones, independent worlds that had chosen to remain neutral. Our goal is not to replace Imperial dominance with human dominance, Jake explained. Our goal is to demonstrate that voluntary cooperation produces better results than forced compliance. Every world must have the right to choose its own path. Lisa felt a surge of pride as she listened. This was what made humanity's approach different from every other liberation movement in galactic history. They genuinely meant what they said about freedom. The assembly began its formal business: trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, research sharing protocols. But Lisa found herself thinking about the personal transformations she had witnessed. Commander Ben Taylor, once Earth's military strategist, now worked with former Imperial officers to establish the Galactic Defense Corps. Their mission was not conquest, but protection of worlds that chose freedom over oppression. Colonel Nick Davis led humanitarian missions to worlds devastated by Imperial resource extraction. His teams included volunteers from dozens of species, all working to rebuild civilizations that had been nearly destroyed. Chief Engineer Paul Davis coordinated the massive infrastructure projects needed to connect free worlds with communication and transportation networks that didn't depend on Imperial systems. All of them had changed from warriors fighting for survival to builders working for the future. "Dr. Grant," came a voice behind her. Lisa turned to see Captain Morrison approaching as the assembly broke for recess. "Jake, excellent speech. How do you think they're responding?" Jake's expression was thoughtful. "Better than I hoped. A year ago, most of these species couldn't imagine working together. Now they're planning joint missions to liberate the remaining Imperial territories." "Any regrets?" Lisa asked. "About how everything developed?" Jake was quiet for a moment, looking out through the chamber's vast windows at the sprawling city beyond. Once the symbol of Imperial power, it was now becoming something unprecedented. A truly cosmopolitan center where thousands of species lived and worked together as equals. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had never hidden," he admitted. "If we had accepted Imperial membership from the beginning." "We would have become just another conquered species," Lisa replied firmly. "Scattered across the galaxy, our best minds working for Imperial research projects, our culture slowly absorbed into their system." "Maybe. But we also might have changed them from within." Lisa shook her head. The Empire's system was too strong for that. It had absorbed thousands of species over millennia. We needed to be outside it to understand its weaknesses. Jake nodded slowly. "I suppose isolation taught us something the Empire never learned." "What's that?" "Sometimes you have to close the door so you can learn how to open it properly." They stood together watching the assembly reconvene, representatives from across the galaxy working to build something that had never existed before. A galactic civilization based on freedom rather than fear. Through the windows, Lisa could see children from dozens of species playing together in what had once been the Emperor's private gardens. They had been born into oppression, but would grow up in freedom, taking for granted rights that their parents had never imagined possible. The Empire still existed in the core worlds, a shadow of its former self. But increasingly, it seemed like a relic of a darker age rather than an active threat. The galaxy had chosen a different path. "You know what the most amazing part is?" Jake asked. "What?" The Empire created their own worst enemy. If they had left Earth alone, we probably would have joined their civilization happily. We would never have understood how oppressive it was. Lisa smiled. But they couldn't leave us alone. Bullies never can. As the afternoon session began, delegates worked on the most ambitious project yet, establishing the Galactic Recovery Initiative. Its mission was to heal the damage done by millennia of imperial exploitation, restoring worlds that had all been strip-mined and helping scattered populations reunite. It was work that would take generations. But for the first time in galactic history, there was hope that it could actually be accomplished. Earth's borders were open now, but not through conquest. They were open through choice, as part of a galaxy where every world could determine its own destiny. Humanity had proven that strength didn't come from domination, but from the courage to stand up to bullies and the wisdom to help others do the same. The child who had grown up in the Emperor's throne room might never know what oppression felt like. And that, Lisa thought, was the greatest victory of all.